morning, everybody. Thank you all for being here. Today we're going to be starting the floor project. Kind of a little ahead of the game. I'll probably go back in time a little bit and show you some of the repairs. But here is the floor in pre-sanding condition. So I did indeed decide to sand and refinish the floors. You remember previously we did the staircase, which is looking good. That was some water-based polyurethane, some Minwax. All my repairs have been made. I'll just show that now, and then we'll go back in time and I'll show you those repairs really quick afterwards. But these are some spots. So before, when the wall sheathing was there, the floorboards didn't have to go as far, but after I did everything I've done, it was the staggered edges. Boards are running this way, so I track sawed that straight, filled in, had to do that in both rooms. So it's just these two rooms that I need to sand, this being the living room, this being the dining room. Here's a spot that I'd filled in much earlier in the renovations. We'll be working around to the top of the basement staircase. I had to track saw a little bit off of this board, and I filled in with a scrap piece of flooring that I had. A lot of this is just random boards that I had that would closely match the color of the flooring. This was a board out of the house next door that was being used as some sort of a diagonal support on the rafters in the attic. I went up there and got that out, because this is a much more showpiece that I needed to look nice. And then from about here across, there'll sort of be a threshold wood transition going down into the kitchen. There's a little bit of a height difference. Had to do the same here and kind of rebuild around the return for the heating and cooling. But that's where we're at. So the floors are in the condition they're in. They're rough looking. There's little high spots here and there, but we're going to go with what we got and see what the end results are. I rented the machines from Home Depot. This is about, I'd say with the taxes, or if there's even tax on this, it's about 80 some dollars, 85 and about 60 for a 24-hour rental. And then you just get all the paper and discs, the drums that go on here. This is what it looks like. That's a 36 grit that I'm starting with. And then there's discs on that. I'll be sanding it all. The plan, at least for right now, is diagonal sanding. I'll probably go diagonal this way. And then when I step to the next grit, I'll move with the grain and then move up to a higher grit. And I'll talk about those grits when I'm done, probably, because I might end up changing my mind on which ones I use. But so yeah, give another before. And now let's get to work. Here is this floor after two 36 grit belts. Looking pretty good. Also did a little edger practice right here along the stairwell. And then over in this area where I can't get the belt sander. And then my little boy showed up. And he did it right here, so he has 4. So I stood there helping him out, and he sanded out that little spot just to kind of try it out. But I'm pleased with the direction. The floor looks great. There's no bad staining anywhere. Once you get past the finish, which is still some spots that I need to get out. So, you went from this to, it's going in the right direction. Looks better in person. It's kind of, the white balance is thrown off on the camera right now. But I've got a worn out belt on here right now. I'm gonna go ahead and crisscross this room. I'll go 45 this way and 45 this way, and just kind of put the first hit of getting this paint and hitting any nails on this older belt, and then I'll switch over to a new belt and do this room. And then I'll probably just do the whole thing one more time after that. We are ready for finish, minus a touch more vacuuming. So you can see the differences in the floor, rougher, better condition. This was a patch that I did around the chimney and the old framing right here. For this is the main trunk, I guess you call it, of the, I don't know, HVAC ducts running through there. Had to do some repair over here by the door, some there with the strips around the edges of the room. The bad looking spot here in the middle and under this window was from water from this window over time, not just while I owned it, but previous to that. And then this was, I think, the upstairs window leaking. It ran across the floor and was dripping right there is what I'm thinking, because the upstairs floor is slightly dished out. And I remember on one of the occasions where water was pouring in the house while I owned it, I remember the floor was wet right here. A couple of those pieces I screwed back down to kind of tighten them down. Off camera, I did some wood filler screw holes and then specific nail holes that really stood out, different issues that stood out. Some of the things were in here. I think that's actually Bondo. I'm going to leave that. If one wanted to, you could very easily kind of color match that a little bit. How I would do it with some acrylic paints and do some faux finish of the grains. There's all this wild grain in this pine. You could easily kind of do something to disguise from it. It's also stainable if you want to stain the whole floor. I think if you stain the floor, you'd have to do a better job sanding it. I'm just going to do polyurethane. So it's just going to deepen what you see here, basically. And if you stained it, the stains would really kind of, I think, darken up in your, where you have issues. And then where, say, you didn't sand fully, the previous grit fully sand out, you'd probably have darker areas with that. So I think for me, just polyurethane. I'm using the oil-based polyurethane because of the oven working time. I don't want to be rushed with the, even when I was doing just these stair treads with the water-based finish, by the time I was just finishing the stair tread, it was already kind of setting up and you could see it where you were starting to drag the finish. And you know, I don't know. I don't want to be rushed like that. I'm using a fast drying polyurethane. I'll show the can in just a little bit, but that will give me an open working time to where your wet edge it's just easy. I like the way polyurethane looks on floors as well. You know, just makes them look great, I think. And that long-term yellowing that occurs, it doesn't matter, the floor is already yellow. Floors looks much better in person with my eyeballs than it does on camera. The camera is kind of intensifying, it's kind of like turning up the saturation or turning up the contrast just a little bit. It's much more uniform. It doesn't have these darker areas that are showing up in the screen. They're not as much in person. Very quickly, I used 5 36 grit belts, 2 80s, and 2 120s. So that was my progression. I think now I would do maybe even 24 grit in certain areas just to do the first leveling, then do a 36, then do a 60, then a 100. That's what I think I'll try next time if I do it. And then I can, go up higher if I want to. I used 5 36-inch discs, 36 grit discs, 3 of the 80s and 3 of the 120s. And then I used my oscillating tool, a little triangular sander, to hit the corners, used a scraper where needed, and then I used an orbital sander to kind of blend in some areas with the same 120. My wood filler was this plastic wood in pine. The polyurethane is just a Minwax, just their nicest polyurethane for floors. Be applying with a lambskin applicator. Other than that, I'll share any thoughts and opinions at the end of the video, but that is the final look before finish. Let's get finished. My phone filled up, screwed up that last shot. I apologize for that. I need to get a dedicated iPhone that I just use for filming videos. This is sort of my personal phone, so it's got, all the pictures you have on a normal phone, videos, and it takes up space. Haven't deleted them. I want one that I just film, upload my stuff, then delete it off the phone to where it's basically always full. This one is just barely got enough to film, and I go take some stuff off. It's just packed. So I want to get a new one. I'll work on that. But here we are. First coat. You can see the sheen of a first coat, so it takes unevenly depending on the piece of wood. Some areas, like over here, this is real resinous. That stayed tacky for a very long time. So I wasn't able to get 2 coats in one day yesterday. I put the first coat on yesterday, started sometime around 7, finished around 7:30. So kind of in that 30-minute window. I was planning on putting on some more around midnight, but it stayed tacky in just a few spots. So it's the next day. It's around 10 right now, a.m. And I'm gonna I'm lightly sand it with a drywall pole sander. I'm gonna attempt to use a 220 screen meant for drywall just to see how that works. If I don't like that, I've got some 320 sandpaper just to knock off anything on the surface. Then we'll go second coat. I'll sand it again, probably with the 320 at that point. And then a third coat, and a third coat might do it, but there could potentially be a fourth. I'm using a 2.5 gallon bucket of polyurethane. So I would like to keep it to that. It was $136 and change for that 2.5 gallon. Polyurethane is no longer inexpensive. So this is a pole sander for drywall. You can see the flippy floppy head, and then it has a sanding screen on there. So a lot of people will use sanding screens on buffers, floor sanders in between coats. So this is just a quick way to do this, an easy way. It keeps you from having to be down on your hands and knees doing it. And I tested this at the top of the stairs, and it worked very good. All I'm trying to do right now is just knock down anything that's laying on top to finish. When you're doing your finish and you're applying it in the vacuum, before, it's really hard to get everything perfect, so you're going to end up with some dust, maybe some dirt from between the cracks. The lamb's wool can kind of flip up some of the stuff that gets between the boards. This is going to cut all that down, and then your finish itself is sort of glued a lot of that stuff together. So you're turning it into something that is sandable. So all I'm doing is just going for very light, and I'm going to, kind of get the hang of it as I go. I'm not really trying to sand down into the wood. I'm just trying to kind of take the high spot off the finish. And I would say probably too, when you have a floor that might not be perfect, you can think about the orientation of the sanding head. If you have it like this, you might be spanning across several high spots in the wood, but if you turn it like this, you might be getting between them just a little bit more. You'll have to kind of play that by whatever your situation is. And if you want, you can rub your hands around on the entire thing. Like, this is so much rougher feeling over here. You get tiny little spots where the lamb's wool or lambskin, the wool kind of pulls off on a little splintered part of the floor. So this is going to take care of that. So there's one I know for sure is there. And it's gone. And then of course you're going to go subsequent layers of finish plus sanding. A lot of that's going to go away. It's been a couple hours, about 4.5 hours, and I'm able to stand on it now. So I'm going to give it another light sanding and hopefully the final coat of poly. And this is a satin, so you can kind of see the glow reflection from the window in this window. And I'm very pleased. It's really starting to get that home look, an actual nice house look, the further it goes. The baseboards are really going to make it. take a look from here. Of course, this is looking like ultra gloss. Won't look like this once the satin kicks in. I wish y'all could see it in person. It's warmer looking. This just looks like a nasty, dirty yellow looking through the viewfinder. But it's just got a really nice, antique pine floral look. Most of you probably know what that looks like. It's hard to get it to, let's see if I can get it to, yeah. Sometimes when you tap over, I'm tapping over on the white part of the wall to see if I can get it to white balance a little better. That's just the way it is. You all know what it looks like. See the difference in the color of the steps versus the, again, the color's not that true. Both of them are a little more warmer, more orangey, warmer, amber looking than yellow. But this is the water-based versus the oil-based. So there's sort of different, so of course different wood, but it's really not that far off. This is certainly more amber than that, but this has sort of an amber tint to it as well. That is the Minwax water-based formula. This is the oil. Here's a view from the kitchen. So right now it is Friday around probably 8 at night. I'll be back Monday morning around 10 a.m. or so. So that is a full over 48 hours for it to dry from this point on. Probably going to turn the air conditioner on to around 74. It's actually 74 degrees in here right now, but somewhere around 74, maybe 72, to where it just runs pretty much the whole time, removing humidity and get a little air movement, and so it'll kind of aid it in drying. But in 2 hours from now, the satin sheen will be set. Right now it looks like it's just a super high gloss because it's wet. But looking at it, it's a very, very even wetness. So I'm thinking this is going to be all the coats I need, with it being pine and soaking up so much finish on that initial coat, and then kind of a little bit more of a thorough sanding, not heavy. I thought I might have to go 4, but I think 3 is enough. And again, I wish I could make y'all see the full color. Of course, this is on my phone. It might look better by the time it ends up in the video. But yeah. See you Monday. It is Monday, so I finished that up on Friday evening. So we're more than 48 hours past that point now. Floors are totally walkable. I can still dent the finish with my fingernail, but polyurethane, oil-based poly takes, depends on some variables, but a couple weeks, a month or so to kind of cure up. I think they say you want to be pretty light on it for at least the first week, obviously, but I'm going to be pretty careful with it. Basically, I'm going to stay off of it, except for, socked feet over the next month or so while I'm finishing up everything else. And I might use that as my time frame of trying to get this place finished within the next month, which I think is totally plausible at this point. The other big things I need to do are some gutters, the basement window, the basement door, and a cleanup outside. Appliances, there's really no work to that. I just need to get them. Baseboards down here, some small details like getting the internet wires hooked up, the floor registers. I need to do some adjustments on this door to make it shut a little better. Trim work, staircase is done. Let's look at that from this angle. Of course, there's junk all over the place, but I mean, imagine this back before the staircase was done. No rail, just messy looking. And then nice staircase. Imagine the baseboards run around. Beautiful. It's gonna look like a real home. Here we are around the corner here. So, painted floors. I should have, while I had the sander, I could have sanded out those basement steps, but I don't know if I'd want that. It doesn't matter. I'm just gonna vacuum those off and clean them up. It's just some basement steps. I might just replace it, but if I don't replace it, I've got a blasting cabinet, so I might kind of lightly blast off the return grate and then paint that. whatever color. I'll probably get white register covers. So I don't know what this will be. I think they look best black, the bigger one. Long story short, just be painted. Here we are from this angle. I'm very pleased. I can't, really right now, everything, the color-wise on the screen of my phone versus what it looks like with my eyeballs is pretty close. Looks a little darker on camera, but that could just be my screen. But it's just so nice to have it just be nice and clean. So this was one of the shots I did, I think, where I went like this, just to show a before and after. I hope I remember to put a before and after. Some of my issues I had sanding, which I may make adjustments in the future. I would sand the floor again, but it's a lot of work. I don't know what this would have cost to have done though. So you can see in the reflection on the floor, you can see the glare and the crisscross pattern from me sanding. So you can, like right there. And that is where I think I sanded it first with the 36 grit diagonally, which my thinking in that was for the leveling, and then switched, went crisscross, and then I did it some this way. I think I really should have put on a fresh belt before I went this way and done a full kind of cut down and cut all that away. And then the same thing through my progression of higher grits. I would do a better job at that next time. But again, the reason you're seeing it the worst here is just because there's a reflection here. When you look over here with my eyeballs, I can't see it. There's a few spots where you can kind of see like a diagonal kind of streak. Yeah, there's one. So you can see right there, that's where some of the previous grit got left. Didn't get sanded out by those 80 belts. Right here's a little bit, but none of this feels rough. All this, I can just slide my feet and it does not, it's just, I'm not saying it's glass smooth as in slippery, but I'm not hanging up on anything right now, shuffling around. I'm also surprised some of this wood filler that I used, of course you can see it, but by the time you got to the third layer of polyurethane, it ambered those up enough to where they don't stick out quite as much, and that was the Bondo that I mentioned before. And you can still see some of the existing paint down in sort of some of the grain that had gotten worn out and in certain areas, but none of that bothers me. I think all that just goes into sort of the character of an antique pine floor, and just enjoy it for what it is, not some unrealistic ideal that you could think of what the floor could look like. If you're hung up on that, you pull this up and you put whatever you want down or put something over top of it. But I would so much rather have this than vinyl plank flooring or some other floor covering that you would put down. Of course, someone could come in here and tear all this up. I'm not blind or ignorant to what could happen to this floor, but I'm hoping with it looking nice and maybe some warnings from the property manager that I don't want to see the floor get torn up, that someone will respect it. What I've been doing on the last house I rented, my personal house, and then what I'm gonna do on this one is I'll buy those big packs of felt pads and then those like little furniture cups you set stuff on, and I'll leave them right on the counter and for the people to use to where there's no excuse that they're not here. A big pack of them to where there's plenty of them. And then even then you can also leave a note just saying, please use these under all furniture. Don't tear up the floors. And if somebody sees you go out of the way to say that, I think they're going to know that that's a little more important to you, and hopefully not do it. So still need to do the registers, baseboards. The baseboards, I'm kind of tempted to do not just my little dinky 4-inch standard ones you can buy at Lowe's, but I'm thinking maybe something taller, a 1x6, 6-inch baseboard. I would like to do them like in my house where it was an actual 3/4 6-inch board. And then I did a polyurethane pine quarter round, and then I did base cap on top of that. So the total height of the baseboard, the whole trim job was between 7 and 8 inches, probably about 7, because your your 6-inch board is 5 and whatever it is, let's say 5.5, then the base cap is probably 1 3/4. So you're around 7 inches. And then that quarter round being the wood, polyurethane pine, I think it looks really nice. Unnecessary, and I might not do it now. I might just go with that simple basic baseboard right now, and then in the future, if it ever mattered, meaning if you were to sell the place, then you might come back in and do nicer trim jobs, because the windows are very simply trimmed too, versus what you could, making this door and these windows trimmed out really nice. All these, at least downstairs, and sort of the public areas of the house having nicer finishes, I think would make a big difference if the dollars demanded it. Because of course I've got basic flooring here, but you could easily, because this is sitting up 3/4 of an inch, so I've got to put like a wood transition, sort of like a threshold piece is going to go right here. But with this being as it is, you could come in here easily and just put pine floors. I've got enough to easily do this whole kitchen of this old type flooring. I could just put down in here and you could do pine floors in here. But for right now, this is perfectly fine. It's easily replaceable. Won't get damaged, water, people sliding stuff around, whatever the case. So that is that. I don't think I have anything else to add. I spent $136 on the polyurethane. I still have maybe about a gallon of the 2.5 gallons left. There's 3 coats. The second and third coat really weren't all that thin, so they went on there pretty decent. I'll have to kind of add up the costs and hopefully remember to put that on the screen. The sanding discs, I think I spent probably $150 to $170 with the sanding discs and drums, and then let's see, about $85 plus $65 for the 2 sanders. And then there's all those like little small things that you have to go and get. Wood filler for $9. The pole sander was $10. A pack of sandpaper or sanding screens was, I think, $6. I had to buy the wood pole, the lambskin, so it's like $7 and then $8. Of course, my time, various hardware, screws that I used. If you're starting from absolutely nothing and having nothing, any job is expensive. Once you have tools and you have a lot of the basic stuff you need, it's not too bad. And I had somebody tell me, I think it's overkill, but I had someone tell me that they thought this might cost $3,000 to have somebody do these 2 rooms, which sounds crazy. I mean, I could see somebody these days telling you something like that, but I would imagine you could probably get 2 rooms like this sanded around $1,500. That's just me though, basing it on nothing. I think I had my floor sanded in my house, which would have been about 2.5 times probably this much. Maybe 3 times this much. And I think that was about $2,000 10 years ago. And it was the same basic process, sanded, polyurethane, nothing fancy. The results, it's the same as this, but not that diagonal. Like my imperfections, that wasn't there. But there were other imperfections, like where you can see it was like drips in the polyurethane here and there. But again, by the time you got your stuff in it and you live in there, you're not thinking about any of that. It's perfectly fine. So that's that. I was going to do baseboards in this video, but I'm not going to do the baseboards for a while because I want to be easy on this finish until it's cured. So I want to go ahead and get the video out. Thank you all very much. I've been talking for 11 minutes. Greatly appreciate your patience. If you want to contribute to the channel financially, you can do so a handful of ways. Check the description below. I have a Patreon link there. Monthly contributions. If you would like to get my book on how I buy places just like this for very low prices, check out my ebook, Cheap Houses, How I Find and Buy Inexpensive Real Estate. It's available on Amazon as a Kindle, and then I have it set up, I say Kindle, you can just read it through any kind of app, and then I have a PDF version as well. You can do one-time donations through PayPal, all that, link below. links below. I mean, if you have any questions, be sure to ask, and I'll try my best to answer. Thank you all so much. I'll see you next time.